Okay, so now we have to do a video on percent. So here we go. That's the title. It's 7.1 in your book. Okay, so here we go. It's called percents. So let's start off with the very fundamental and very important stuff. How do you change something if you have it in percent and you need to change it to decimal? Very crucial. Both backwards and forwards are both crucial. So I'll call this problem number one. And I want to give you a few of them, not too many. It's not too much of a big deal, but if you've got, let's say 80%, we want to change the decimal. Let's try 37.5%, changing it into decimal. And the third one, 6%, changing it into decimal. Very important to know how to change something from percent to decimal. Okay, so here comes the answers. There's an invisible decimal point right here, right next to every number, right? The number 3, the number 72, the number 408. There's an invisible decimal place right to the right of all those numbers. We don't need the decimal place most of the time. So there's an invisible decimal place point. So move it over to the left. So instead of 80, it becomes 0.8. 0.80, but don't 0.80 will not be on Alex as your answer. 0.80 turns into 0.8. So just to take that invisible decimal place and move it over 2 places to the left and forget the percent sign. We're now in decimal. So here's what you answer, 0.8. What happens if you move this decimal place 2 places to the left? It becomes 300. 2 places to the left. It's going to become, I'm sorry, not 300, 0.375. Move it over 2 places to the left, put it over here, so it becomes 0.375. That is the answer. And what about this? There's an invisible decimal place. You move it over 1 and 2. What happens when you move it over 2 places? There's a gap here. You've got to fill that gap. You can't leave that alone. It's got to be filled with a 0, so it becomes 0.06 in decimal. Problem over. You can cut off a trailing 0, but the 0 in front of a number cannot, it has to be left alone. Okay, there's problem number one. Let's go to problem number two and let's go in the opposite direction. What if I give you decimals? I give you a bunch of decimals and I ask you to change them into percent. Okay, we need to know how to do that too. Forget this, this is just scrap paper. Okay, let me give you the examples I want to take care of. Here's 0.472. We want to change that to percent. We want 1.03 to go into percent. And we want, let's say you were thrown a curve, 7/8, and let's see how to deal with that. We'll worry about that in a second. These are the easy ones. Move over, this time when we go into percent to decimal, we went to the left. When we're going from decimal to percent, we're going to the right. 1 place, 2 places. So it becomes 47.2 and then tack on the percent sign. We're dealing with percent. Tack on the percent sign. 2 places to the right. This turns into 103%. Okay, what about 7/8? How do you deal with that? Take out your calculator, right? You can use a calculator. Divide 8 into 7, 7/8, and you're going to see that your calculator is going to show up. It's going to turn into a decimal, 0.875, 0.875, and then we want it to become a percent, right? So move it over to the right, 1 place, 2 places. It becomes 87.5%, and that is the final answer. You circle. This was the final answer. There was no big deal there. This was the final answer. And this, we needed a calculator to get us to the decimal. Once we got from the fraction to the decimal we turned into a percent pretty easily. Okay, let's look at percent to fraction. This is the least important, I believe, in my estimation, going from percent to fraction. But let's look at a couple of those, and then we move on. Percent to fraction. If you have something like 80% that you need to change into a fraction, so here's what you do. Turn it into 80 over 100. 80% means 80%. Cent in French, cent, whatever, cent in French is 100. So, or centenarian in English, or centennial. Those are all means 100. All mean 100. So therefore, 80 over 100 is what it turns into a fraction. But you cannot leave a fraction unreduced. Never forget that. Whenever you can reduce, you must reduce. So if you divide 80 by 20, you're going to get 4. If you divide 100 by that same 20, you're going to get 5. So if they ask you a question like this is what they want as the final answer. Okay, how about 37.5%? We're throwing a little curve over here. 37.5%. So that is equal to 37.5 over 100. Still not very practical. We got to get ourselves a fraction. So what we can do with this is just multiply it by 2 and we'll get rid of that decimal. Multiply it times 2. That'll be an easy strategy. Times 2, top and bottom. What we get is 75 over 200. Here's our fraction, but can it be reduced? Yes, it can. So if it can be reduced, you got to keep going. 25 goes into 25 3 times. 25 goes into 200 8 times. And here's the final answer that has to be shown. Because whenever you can reduce a fraction, you must reduce a fraction. Okay, so that gets us started. Now we go to a word problem. We have to do a couple word problems in percent. I think I have some room for at least one more thing at the bottom of this page. Okay, so problem number 4, word problem. 9.1%. Here's the word problem, roughly speaking. I mean, I don't write the whole word problem down. 9.1% of nurses, wherever it is, whatever country in the United States, whatever it is, of nurses, okay, 1 second, are, let's say, college educated. Okay, so now a hospital, average hospital. I made it a little complicated over here for no good reason, but anyway, average hospital has 347 nurses. Question. Here's the question. How many are college educated? How many are college educated? There's no D in college. Sorry about that. Embarrassing. Mistake. College. Are college educated? Okay, so now that's 90.1% of nurses are college educated. So what this turns into is we need 9.1% of 347. That's what we need to figure out. 91. Now of is translates into multiplication, but we can't use percent. We got to change it into decimal. What is 9? Here's my scrap paper. What is 9.1% in decimal? Where do we move the decimal place? To the left. 1, 2. So this turns into 0.091 decimal. Therefore, the calculation is 0.091 times 347 equals what? Now, I'm not using a calculator, I'm just looking up the answer. The answer is 31.577. 31, but you use a calculator. 0.091 times 347, you should get 31.577, at least rounded to the third place decimal. And there is our answer for this problem. If you see the word of, it translates into times. And now nurses, that's what it's about. So look, they want us to talk about 347 nurses. So this turns into 9.1% times 347. 9.1% is not practical to be used to multiply. We got to turn it into decimal. Decimal 0.091 times 347, and we get a final answer. And that is the story for this problem. Okay, now let us do another one since time seems to be permitted. The thing hasn't gone off. My alarm hasn't gone off. Let's go up here, get another piece of paper, and there we go. Okay, so here's the next